So what we have here is a representation of a factory and the equipment that's used. We have a motor, and that motor can be an elevator motor. It could be a air conditioning motor. It could be a motor that actually runs a particular piece of manufacturing equipment. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply electricity to the motor.
Okay,
And
I understand.
it's a very low impact motor. It's not loaded, single horsepower. So what I will do with our electrical meter is actually just take some readings of what the motor is actually requiring to run from the electrical company.
So current output, in other words.
Well, current input from the electrical company.
Okay.
So right now we're reading 4.89 amps.
That's correct.
And we're going to take a second reading along the other branch of it to see that we're getting more or less the same thing.
Close.
Okay. And just a little bit of electrical theory. When you branch that together, you should zero out, neutralize your electrical distribution. Okay, and we're going to take another reading on the actual distribution side to see what's that motor pulling in, what it needs to actually run.
4.89.
4.89, more or less the same thing as what your electrical company is giving you.
Okay.
So now we will actually introduce the treatment into the operability of this motor. One of the most important things to realize is when we actually introduce our treatment into the facility, we arrange it not in series, but in parallel. And in parallel, what it allows us to do is to treat your motor, but at the same time, in the event that our treatment is not working, not functioning properly, your motor will still continue to run. It will not be impacted.
It'll still function.
It will still function. So what I'm going to ask you to do is actually put your hand on the motor.
Okay.
While I introduce our treatment. Just notice if you feel any change in how the motor was running, if any change in it since I introduced our treatment.
It's vibrating a little bit less.
Vibrating, okay. So what we're going to do now is actually take some measurements. We took measurements prior to. We're going to see what the actual motor is running based on. Okay, so the motor is showing that it still needs the same amount of electrical output in order to function.
Mm-hmm.
So now what we're going to do is take some readings of what we're pulling in from the electrical company. Can you read that?
Wow, big difference.
Okay.
0.157.
So we're showing more or less a 60% drop in what was required for the motor to pull from the electrical company.
Huge difference.
Now, this doesn't represent a 60% drop in your overall bill, but what it shows is treatment at each individual motor within your facility together helps to actually reduce the consumption of your overall equipment.
Wow, that's neat.
So we're not finished. I asked about the operability of the motor, how we treat the motor, and how it interferes with the day-to-day operation of your facility.
Correct.
We introduced our treatment. You saw the drastic difference.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the event that our treatment ceases to function, we're just going to simulate that. Again, put your hand on the motor. I will simply disconnect our treatment. Was there any noticeable difference in the motor function?
It's not stop functioning, still functions 100%
okay.
operation.
So what we're going to do is go back and just take some measurements on the distribution side from the electrical company to see what has changed as far as what you're now pulling into your facility in order to make your motor run.
We're back at now 0.4479 to 484.
All right, so now you're back at the 4.9 amps that the motor is actually pulling in to run, which means you're now going back to paying, let's say, $4.9 per kilowatt hour.
As opposed to the 60% reduction that you showed me.
Absolutely, right, exactly. So our treatment, it's an inert discharge capacitor that we introduce in line with the motor that actually helps to store the energy, and the motor pulls the energy as it needs it. So the energy comes in from your electrical company, we manage, we store it, and we distribute it to the motor when it needs it. Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
Where do I sign up?